Hello everybody, and today we're going to be talking about the Unitarians. Now, the Unitarians are a very interesting country inside of What If Civilization Started Over, aka WICSO. And by the way, if you don't know what WICSO is, then this video is not going to make any sense. But if you do know what WICSO is, good. Because the Unitarians are a very interesting country. They do harbor an ideology known as Unitarianism, where you abandon all of your culture and heritage to go to the perfect society. And this has now become a worldwide kind of ideology that a lot of countries use, such as Japan, Indonesia, South Africa, Iberia, and of course the founding place of Unitarianism, Canada. If you guys do enjoy today's scenario, then please consider liking and subscribing to reach our goals of 1.5k by the end of the year. Make sure to turn on the notification bell to be notified whenever I post. Join the Discord server, we make maps, we make flags, it's a whole bunch of fun. And join the channel membership to get exclusive and early content as well as member shoutouts. And yeah, now we can get straight into today's scenario. Now, on the subject matter of the Unitarians, I will be giving a brief history and just overview of what Unitarianism is, and how it could affect the WICSO world as the series is coming to an end. I will also be giving some possible predictions for the Unitarians, and just giving my own opinion on the matter. So first, let's talk about what makes a country want or not want to join Unitarianism. Basically, over the last couple of days, I have deciphered that a country joining Unitarianism is based off their socioeconomic class and their military class. For example, we saw a lot of weak countries over here in South Africa unite to become African Unitaria, and so far they have prospered. Indonesia kind of became a Unitarian country with the dark red Bornese country, if that's how you say it. The dark red Indonesian country, they just joined Unitarianism because they were already united in a sense, so it doesn't really matter whether you are fractured or united, you can still join. For example, a bulk of these African nations could join, and just a singular African nation could join, and their eligibility probably wouldn't change. But just giving a brief overview on the religion layer, you can see that a very obvious outline of the Unitarian countries is present, and that is because their Unitarian religion includes them just abandoning their culture. For example, before Unitarianism, this area was all purple, but then slowly but surely this new darkish green religion, or I don't even know whether to call it a religion or not, because if you're abandoning a religion and you follow that kind of status quo, is it a religion? It's a way of life, I think. But now I'm going to be giving a brief history of it. Now, just, very brief, and at the end of World War II, which was episode 30, we saw a bulk of brand new nations over here in Canada. They got their independence from the Irish, French, and Galicians, creating a multitude of states over here in Quebec. These states, for their existence before Unitarianism, were very intertwined in both military and economy. There was basically no need for a military presence as all of these guys were relatively friendly. And eventually, in episode 73, Atis Pro introduced the idea of Unitarianism. And eventually, they grew a lot. They started as a very small state, basically encompassing these areas. But then the gold Great Lakes country over here, they joined. And then the dark green Hudson Bay country joined. And they were looking a little something like that. But then Canada collapsed, so they got all of this. And they also got unification with Greenland. And in the most recent episode of Atis Pro's WICSO, we saw that Pink New York joined. But of course, Canada is not the only resemblance of Unitarianism around the world. Like I said, Iberia, Africa, Indonesia, and Japan, these are all places that have adopted the perfect society, and they all joined for various reasons. For example, Japan, it's very similar to what happened in Canada. There were two states that were divided by only a border. There were the same economics, basically the same military, not really a need for military. And they thought, why not? Let's test out this brand new ideology that had recently been tested out by Indonesia, and henceforth came Japanese Unitaria. And what I think determines your Unitarian eligibility, now not eligibility, but your likelihood to join, it's all based on socioeconomic class and military class. For example, these guys down here, they all joined because they were weak. Now, these guys over here were weak. I'm not sure about the beige country, but of course, they all united and made South African Unitaria. But it's very interesting over here in Iberia because these countries were relatively not weak. Of course, in the sense of Galicia, which was up over here, they had a Unitarian revolt. And this was the first instance that we saw Unitarianism being used in a violent way. But then Andalusia joined, and sooner or later Catalonia. And Iberia Unitaria, we see, is the strongest Unitarian country. But it's also pretty interesting to note that there was a dark purple country over here, and they had a Unitarian adoption as well. But then Unitarianism failed as the population overruled this government decision with violence. So Unitarianism has been tried and tested a lot of ways, both with military, with resistance and imposition, and it's basically been done in every single continent except South America. And South America is known as like the freedom something that prevents them from becoming Unitarian. Of course, they can still become Unitarian if their economy, dies. But South America is relatively nationalistic and united without Unitarianism. Of course, with the Circle and 4-point star economic and military alliance. But I want to bring something interesting up. The Mesopotamian region. Like Adis Pro said in episode 94 of WICSO, these guys were trying to find a way to unite. Whether that be with unifications with smaller countries around their border, for example, the Canaanite country joined Mesopotamia, and the blue team has just relatively been pretty big their entire history. I think it's pretty safe to say that the red team and the blue team could combine into Mesopotamian Unitaria. And I assume, like the relations with the Circle, like the Mesopotamian economic order, this would be open to old empire countries. Now, specifically, that's not true. Anybody could join. And they would be combined, most likely, by the jurisdiction in Canada or Iberia. Because, then stated, you abandon your sovereignty, in which you also abandon your authority in a Unitarian body. So maybe that would be one negative of the red team joining, but, it would still be a way to be united with your southern counterpart. Now, of course, also what determines Unitarianism is Adis Pro's preference. For example, there's never going to be a Dutch Unitaria because, everybody would crash out. Mostly because the Dutch are just really, really old and very beloved. But a new country, well, not relatively specific to be new, but a relatively weak country could join. Like these Texan states, it's very possible they could join. But countries like America would probably never join because of nationality and their military class, of which being number 2. So those are just kind of some determining factors of whether a country could become a Unitarian country or remain sovereign. But now here are some predictions for Unitarianism. Now the Mesopotamian one, that wasn't specifically a prediction, that was mostly just like an oversight of the current issue over here. It's a possibility. Now I wouldn't like it if these guys united into Unitarianism, but who knows, Adis Pro can do whatever the hell he wants. But one surefire thing that I think is going to happen is that the Mozambique country and the Lavender country, those guys are going to join Unitarianism. Because Adis Pro said that they are very likely to in episode 94, and I just think that that would be a very likely thing to happen, well, because he said it would happen. Now, of course, I can't read his mind. I can't read Adis Pro's mind. These are all just assumptions based on my own ingenuity. And by the way, if this video makes you upset, then I'm sorry, but these are just my opinions on the matter and with data that I've collected on the WICSO wiki, so make sure to go check that out. But on the kind of opposite side, we see other countries uniting to become sort of a resemblance of Unitarianism. Now, it definitely is not a, exact copy of Unitarianism, but we have been seeing more unifications around WICSO. Of course, with the 2 South Arabian countries over here, the Mesopotamians uniting with the Canaan country, and, most notably, the Lavender Pacifican country. Possibly the largest country in the world, probably duking it out with Siberia for that position. Also, by the way, Japan and Canada are not the same country. They are different countries. It is just they are kind of putting aside borders and differences. So they do operate as separate bodies when it comes to things like the Assembly of Nations. But when it comes to economics and military assets, they may as well be the same country. Because, attack one, attack all. It's kind of the thing where, for example, in the United States, if Florida gets attacked, then obviously the entirety of the United States is going to be involved. Because it is a body known as Congress. And in this position, it is just the body of Unitarian Canada thing. And yeah, it's kind of interesting to give an overview to all of this, maybe kind of think about it, because when you think about it, there are a lot of places that could, become Unitarian. For example, Bengal. Bengal, I think, is a very likely country to become Unitarian with their history of being bullied. Maybe joining Unitarianism would prevent that from happening because India can just easily gobble you up, and so can Vietnam too, and South China. What? The point is that a lot of countries can gobble up Bengal. And just countries that are bordered by stronger countries could also just join. For example, Mauritania, you have this country, which is very strong. I want to say they're like Sierra Leone or Guinea, or I don't know, the Orange Team. The Orange Team and West Africa, even though West Africa and the Orange Team probably don't have aspiration to expand into other countries. But it's also pretty interesting to note the wars that Unitaria has been involved with. But it's also pretty interesting to talk about wars that the Unitarians have been involved with. Some of which being the coalition over here against Red Australia. Of course, the Unitarians, they did get involved with this, along with South China, the Philippines, and Vietnam. And Indonesia Unitaria was actually able to successfully repel Australia from their region, which I think if the Unitarians and the Trapezoid Alliance wasn't there, then Australia may as well just have taken all of this, which is a large chunk of the world. So maybe Unitarianism is a key effect to also try and protect the world, specifically groups of countries, from a underlying threat. But speaking of underlying threat, what is the Unitarian connection and cooperation with the Intergalactic Treaty Organization, I think it's called? The WICSO space thing. A lot of countries are involved with that, and I specifically do think that the Unitarians are also involved in that. And it does correspond with the Singularity Testament warning the world of an incoming threat. So that is also just kind of like another example of a conflict that the Unitarians could be involved with, of course on the intergalactic scale. But it's also pretty interesting to see if countries could reform and then join Unitarianism. For example, maybe Russia could just take all their land back and become Unitarian. Now, of course, that would never happen because the religion over here, they're very nationalistic, of course, being Russia. With all the trials and tribulation that they've gone throughout history, that is probably something that, wouldn't happen. And if it wasn't apparent, like countries like India and China, they're not going to join Unitarianism because they're already like economically and militarily well off on their own. But yeah, that's just kind of an oversight of Unitarianism. Now, I know this video is oh gosh, this video is going to be very short. The recording for me is only 16 minutes long right now, so maybe I'll add some watch time at the end, I don't know. But that will conclude today's video of the oversight of the Unitarians. If you guys did enjoy today's video, then please consider liking and subscribing, like I said earlier, to help us reach our goal of 1.5K by the end of the year. Notification bell, Discord server, and channel membership, all of them help a ton, and they provide you with very useful perks. For example, with the channel membership, you get custom emojis. You have the Augusto logo emoji, the globe emoji, and of course, who could forget, my face is also an emoji. And yeah, just relatively all of the perks that the channel contains are pretty cool in my opinion. But yeah, on that note, I will see you guys in tomorrow's video. And of course, thank you to the channel members. This includes Realm WICSO, Swifty Mapping, BFDIA Channel Y, The Official Geomapper, and Upgraded Bro. Thank you guys for joining the membership, and if you're not in the membership, then go ahead and check it out down below.